Her family kept saying, "We miss your ex. He was so much better for our daughter." I smiled and said, "I understand." Then I ended the relationship and sent her back to her perfect ex. Their desperate calls started when he refused to take her back. I, 29 male, am a software engineer living in the Pacific Northwest. I'm a pretty standard guy. I work hard. I keep my head down, and I try to take care of the people I love. For the last 2 years, the person I was trying to take care of was my girlfriend. When we met, she was having a rough time. She was working 2 retail jobs, drowning in student loans, and living in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates who were nightmares. I didn't care about her bank account. I fell for her personality, or at least the personality I thought she had. 6 months into dating, I asked her to move into my house. I own my place, a decent-sized home I bought before the market went crazy. I didn't ask her for rent. I figured she could use the break to pay down her debts and maybe save a little. All I asked was that she cover her own personal stuff and maybe chip in for groceries here and there. I wanted us to be a team. But there was a third wheel in our relationship that I couldn't get rid of, the ex. According to her family, the ex was practically a demigod walking amongst mere mortals. He worked in high finance, drove a Porsche, and apparently used to shower her family with expensive gifts. The story was that they broke up because the timing wasn't right, or he was too focused on his career. Every single time I visited her parents, I had to hear about him. It was constant, subtle digs. If I brought a bottle of wine to dinner, her mother would swirl it around and say, "This is nice. But do you remember those vintage heavy reds the ex used to bring?" He really knew his vineyards. If I fixed their Wi-Fi or their printer for free, which I did constantly, her father would hover over me and say, "The ex had a presence, you know." He commanded a room. "You're very quiet, aren't you?" I swallowed it every time. I figured they were just protective parents who missed a guy they had known for years. My girlfriend never defended me, though if I brought up on the drive home, she'd gaslight me. She'd say things like, "You're being so sensitive. They just have a history with him. Don't be so insecure, it's not attractive." The dynamic really shifted about 6 months ago when I got a massive promotion at work. I started making serious money, way more than I ever let on to them. I'm a believer in stealth wealth. I drive a 5-year-old Honda. I wear jeans and hoodies, and I don't flash cash. To her parents, I was just a computer guy who got lucky with a mortgage. They had no idea I had paid off the house and was building a rental portfolio. Around this time, the entitlement started to rot the relationship from the inside out. My girlfriend started demanding upgrades. She wanted a new car because her friends were driving better ones. She wanted a vacation to Cabo. When I suggested we budget for it, she rolled her eyes and said, "The ex never needed a budget." The breaking point happened last month at her father's birthday dinner. I paid for the dinner, obviously. It was a high-end steakhouse, and there were 6 of us, me, my girlfriend, her parents, and her brother and his wife. I knew the bill was going to be hefty, probably over $800. We were halfway through the main course, enjoying expensive steaks, when the topic of her cousin's upcoming wedding came up. Her mother let out a dramatic sigh and looked at me like I was a stain on the tablecloth. "It's such a shame you're bringing him," she said, gesturing to me with her fork. "The ex was invited, you know. He's still very close with the family. It's going to be so awkward for everyone." I put my knife down. The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade out. "I'm sitting right here," I said. "We know," her mother said, taking a sip of wine. "We're just being honest. We miss the ex. He was so much better for our daughter. He understood ambition. He understood how to treat a woman like a prize, not a roommate." I looked at my girlfriend. I waited. This was it. This was the moment she needed to step up. She looked at her mother, then at me, and just shrugged. "Mom's just saying you could try harder. The ex set a high bar. It's not an insult, it's a standard." The table went quiet. Something inside me just clicked off. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was just absolute clarity. I realized I was an extra in their movie, and I was paying for production. "I see," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He was better, Her father grunted, cutting into a steak. In every way that matters to our family's image. He had a spine. He wouldn't let his woman work retail, while he sat on a pile of cash he refuses to spend. They thought I was hoarding money. They thought I was being stingy. In reality, I was maxing out retirement accounts and saving for a ring that was currently sitting in a safe in my home office. So, I said, wiping my mouth with a napkin and placing it gently on the table, you all think she belongs with the ex? Ideally, yes, her mother said, smiling like she just wanted to debate, but we settle for what we can get. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, probably the first one I'd had around them in months. I understand. I signaled the waiter. When he came over, I said loud enough for the table to hear, split the check, please. My meal on one check, the rest of the table on another. Her father's face turned a shade of purple I didn't know existed. Excuse me, I'm leaving, I said, standing up. You guys miss the ex so much? You should go find him. I'm sure he'd love to pay for this meal. Sit down. My girlfriend is grabbing my wrist. Her grip was tight. You are embarrassing me. No, I said, pulling my arm away. I'm freeing you. You're single. Go get him. I walked out of that restaurant, and I didn't look back. I got in my Honda, drove home, and immediately went to the safe. I took out the ring box, looked at it for a second. It was a nice rock, too, and threw it into the cell pile. Then I went to the closet, grabbed some garbage bags, and started packing her stuff. I wasn't throwing things or breaking stuff. I was efficient. I was a software engineer debugging a system. I had identified the error, her and her leech family, and I was executing the removal code. But I knew it wouldn't be that easy. They were entitled. They were delusional. And I knew they would try to claw their way back in. I needed to make sure the door didn't just close. I needed to weld it shut. I texted an old college buddy of mine. Hey, weird question. You still work at the firm that handles the ex's last name S accounts? My buddy replied 3 minutes later. Yeah. Why? I need a meeting. Not for business. For personal reasons. I think I can help him with a harassment problem. See, I knew something her family ignored. The ex wasn't just the one that got away. He was a guy who had filed a restraining order against my girlfriend 3 years ago. It had expired just before we met, and her parents had rewritten history to make it sound like a tragic romance. I was about to facilitate the most awkward reunion of the century. By the time she took an Uber home, her bags were on the porch. It was raining, classic Pacific Northwest weather, which added a nice touch to the garbage bags full of clothes I'd bought her. She banged on the door, screaming, "Open this door. This is illegal. You can't just kick me out." I opened the door, but I stood in the frame, blocking her. Actually, I can't kick you out immediately if you claim tenancy, which I know your dad already texted you to do. But you're not coming in tonight to sleep in my bed. My dad is calling his lawyer, she screamed, mascara running down her face. We have rights. Common law marriage. Washington State doesn't recognize common law marriage, I said calmly, and asked for tenancy here. I handed her a manila envelope. This is a 20-day notice to terminate tenancy. Since you never signed a lease and never paid rent, you are a tenant at will. You have 20 days to vacate. Until then, you can sleep in the guest room. But if you damage a single item, I will sue you for destruction of property. Also, I've changed the Wi-Fi password, canceled the joint credit card, and removed you from my streaming accounts. She snatched the paper, stunned. She pushed past me, dragging her wet bags into the hallway. You're going to regret this. The ex would never treat me like this. The ex isn't here, I said, locking the front door. But don't worry, I'm going to help you get him back. The next week was absolute hell. She played dirty. She would blast music at 2 a.m. She invited her mother over while I was at work to inspect the house. I came home one day to find them labeling furniture with sticky notes, marking things they claimed were hers. This sofa, her mother said, pointing to my $3,000 sectional that I bought before I even met her daughter. She picked out the color. It's intellectual property. We're taking it. Get out of my house, I said to her mother. You're abusive, her mother sneered. Financial abuse. We're documenting everything. We're going to sue you for alimony. You got her used to a lifestyle, you have to maintain it. That's not how the law works for a girlfriend of 2 years. But they were throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. They were trying to scare me into a settlement. They wanted to pay out to leave. Her father called me the next day. Listen, son, we can make this ugly. Or you can cut a check for $50,000 for her pain and suffering and moving expenses, and we walk away. No, I said. Then we ruin you, he threatened. I know people at your company. I'll tell them you're unstable. I'll tell them you hit her. I'll destroy your reputation. That was the line. False accusations. I checked my phone screen. Go ahead, I said. But before you do, I have some news. I reached out to the ex. The line went silent. You did what? I told him you guys were right. He was the better man. I told him your daughter is single and dying to see him. I told him how much you guys miss him. And her father's voice cracked. The greed was palpable. They instantly forgot the blackmail attempt. He wants to meet. Dinner. This Friday. He says he has a surprise. I could practically hear the dollar sign spinning in his eyes. They thought they had won. They thought I was a defeated man handing over the trophy because I couldn't compete. Well, her father cleared his throat. That's big of you. Maybe you aren't so bad. But we still expect that furniture. We'll discuss it after dinner. I lied. I had met with the ex 2 days prior. I found him through LinkedIn and verified the connection through my buddy. We met for coffee. The ex was a sharp guy, successful, but he looked physically pained when I mentioned their names. They're still talking about me? He asked, looking horrified. Man, I changed my number 3 times. That family is a nightmare. She cheated on me with her spin instructor, and her parents tried to cover it up by saying I was emotionally unavailable because I worked 60 hours a week. They told me you were the love of her life. I said. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I filed a restraining order because her dad keyed my car when I refused to pay off her credit card debt after we broke up. Is it true they're trying to extort you? They asked for $50,000. I confirmed. He shook his head. I'm in. Whatever you need. I want them to leave me alone forever. Dinner. I said. They think you want her back. Let's give them a show. Friday night arrived. The deadline for her eviction was looming in 10 days, but she was acting like she had already won. She spent 3 hours getting ready. Her mother came over to help her with her hair. They were giddy. They treated me like the hired help driving them to their victory lap. Don't worry, her mother whispered to me as we walked to the car. We won't leave you completely high and dry. Maybe you can keep the TV. I drove them to the restaurant, the same one where I had broken up with her. I had reserved the private room. We sat down. My ex-girlfriend was beaming, checking her reflection in the spoon. Her parents were ordering champagne before the ex even arrived, putting it on my tab. He's going to propose, her mother whispered loudly. I can feel it. He realizes what he lost. The door opened. The ex walked in. He looked great. Tailored suit, confident walk. My ex-girlfriend stood up, tears in her eyes. You came. I knew you'd come. She opened her arms for a hug. The ex sidestepped her. Coldly, brutally. He didn't come alone. A woman walked in behind him. 6 months pregnant, wearing a rock on her finger that could double as a paperweight. And behind her, a man in a cheap suit carrying a briefcase. A process server. Sit down, the ex said. His voice wasn't warm. It was ice. The family froze. My ex-girlfriend looked like she'd been slapped. Who is? This is my wife, Sarah, the ex said. He pulled out a chair for his wife, then looked at the parents. And this, he pointed to the man with the briefcase, is for you? The silence in the private room was heavier than the humid air outside. The process server stepped forward and dropped a stack of papers in front of the father. Thud. What is this? Her father stammered, his face draining of color. Cease and desist orders, the ex said, taking a seat. He didn't pick up a menu. and a notice of intent to sue for defamation if you ever mention my name to anyone again. I heard you've been telling people we're close. I haven't spoken to you in 3 years. My ex-girlfriend sank into her chair. But Mom said you asked about me. Dad said you were waiting for me to leave him. She pointed a shaking finger at me. The ex laughed. It was a laugh of a man who was untouchable. I haven't thought about you since I scrubbed the key marks off my Porsche. The only reason I'm here is because your ex here reached out and told me you people are trying to ruin his life like you try to ruin mine. Her mother turned on me, eyes blazing. You set this up, you vindictive little. I gave you exactly what you wanted. I interrupted, leaning back in my chair and sipping the champagne they had ordered on my tab. You said you missed him. You said he was better. I just wanted to make sure you got to see him. You have a wife? My ex whispered, staring at Sarah's baby bump. Happily, the ex said, and unlike you, she doesn't treat me like an ATM. Also, I've forwarded a recording of your phone call to the district attorney's office as a character reference for this guy's legal protection. The father choked on his water. You recorded that? Every word. I said, remember when I answered the phone and said, I'm recording this call for my records. Go ahead. You were too busy seeing red to listen. I got the part where you demanded $50,000 and the part where you threatened to lie to my employer about sexual assault. The ex stood up. He hadn't even taken off his coat. I think we're done here. If you contact me, my wife, or this man again, we will press charges for harassment. The restraining order is being refiled as we speak. He looked at me and nodded. Good luck, man. You're going to need it with these parasites. Thanks, I said. Congratulations on the baby. They walked out. I was left alone with the three of them. The tension was nuclear. How could you? My ex-girlfriend sobbed, burying her face in her hands. You humiliated us. No, I said, standing up. You humiliated yourselves. You spent 2 years comparing me to a fantasy. Now the fantasy is dead. We're not leaving the house, her father snarled, trying to regain some shred of dominance. We're going to squat. We'll fight the eviction. It'll take months. Actually, I checked my watch. You might want to check your email. I had been busy. While they were getting ready for dinner, believing they were about to win the lottery, I had my lawyer email her father's employer. What did you do? He whispered. I didn't do anything illegal. I shrugged. But your company has a very strict ethics code regarding extortion and legal blackmail. I simply forwarded the recording of you threatening to destroy my career with false allegations to your HR department. I figured one software engineer to another company. They'd want to know the liability they employ. His phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. He looked at the screen, and his hand started to shake. You got me fired? I protected myself, I said. You declared war. I just finished it. I looked at my ex. You have 9 days left on your notice. But considering your dad probably just lost his income, I'm guessing you guys can't afford a legal battle anymore. I'll make you a one-time offer. You move out tonight completely, and I won't release the video of you screaming at me and throwing a vase last week to the police. I have cameras in the living room. You forgot about those. She looked at her parents. Her mother was weeping. Her father was staring at his phone, pale as a ghost. We'll go, she whispered. The drive back to the house was silent. I followed them in my car. I watched as they frantically packed the rest of her things. The entitlement was gone, replaced by frantic, terrified energy. They were like cockroaches when the lights turn on, scrambling. Her father didn't say a word to me. He wouldn't look me in the eye. The power dynamic had completely inverted. He was no longer the patriarch judging the quiet computer guy. He was a man who had overplayed his hand and lost everything. My ex tried one last Hail Mary as she hauled a box of shoes to her car. I really did love you, you know, she said, sniffing. I was just confused. My parents, they get in my head. Can't we just talk about this? The ex is a jerk anyway. You're the one who was always there. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the manipulation, the lack of accountability. She wasn't sorry she hurt me. She was sorry the upgrade fell through. You didn't love me, I said. You loved that I was a safety net. And now the net is gone. Where am I supposed to go? She cried. My parents can't afford to support me if Dad loses his job. I understand, I said, echoing the words I said at the restaurant. Then I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. I watched through the window as they drove away. The aftermath was swift. Her father was indeed placed on administrative leave and eventually let go. It turns out companies don't like it when their VPs are recorded threatening to fabricate horrible crimes against people. My ex-girlfriend tried to text me for weeks, first begging, then angry, then bargaining. I miss you. You ruined my family. Can I at least come get my shampoo? I didn't reply. I blocked them on everything. I installed a Ring doorbell just in case they tried to come back, but they never did. They knew I had the ammo to bury them legally if they stepped one toe out of line. I spent the next month purging the house. I sold the furniture she liked. I repainted the walls. I sold the engagement ring and used the money to buy a new gaming setup and a trip to Japan. Solo. It's been 3 months now. The silence in my house is beautiful. My bank account is growing. I wake up and I don't have to prove my worth to anyone. I heard through a mutual friend that she's living in a small apartment with her parents, working full-time at a reception desk. Apparently, they still talk about the ex. They've convinced themselves that I manipulated him into rejecting her, that I poisoned the well. They can't accept that they're the problem. And honestly, I don't give a damn. They wanted the perfect ex. I gave them the reality of him. They wanted to play high-stakes games with my life. I showed them I was the one holding controller. Sometimes being the quiet guy is the biggest advantage you have. They never hear the train coming until it hits them.